What's up, guys? So today I wanted to talk a little bit about the next gen consoles, the PS5 in particular. My thoughts on that. I'm not going to go into every little detail. There's 1,000 videos out there about the PS5 or the next Xbox, next gen consoles. They're a lot more thorough, and I can't really get into every little detail. I'm just going to give you my thoughts on the PS5 overall, what I'm looking forward to, and how I think it's going to affect games in the future, NASCAR games in particular. So the PS5 itself, I'm really looking forward to. One thing about the this current generation, the PS4, the PS4 Pro, or the Xbox, it's for me. I always thought it was underwhelming. I think that they really, I think they missed the boat. They really underestimated how much performance people were expecting with a next gen console. And even, right off the bat, I realized, you know what, these consoles really aren't, they are more powerful than the last gen, but in terms of what we're getting, a lot of it does have to do with developers. It usually takes them a while to get their arms around the technology and make the most of it. But even still, for the most part, I haven't been really impressed. So what I'm looking at with this next gen, it really looks like they've learned their lesson and they realize people really are expecting more from these consoles. And they just, this current gen just feels a little underwhelming. We are in 2019 now, and really, in my opinion, and what most people I think are looking for, a baseline of 4K 60 frames, HDR support. To me, that should be the baseline for video games now, today. You really shouldn't have games running below 60 frames, especially race games. One of the things I really am not happy with NASCAR Heat 4 is the frame rate. There's a lot of dips. You still get a lot of pop in. I'm not thrilled with the aliasing. A lot of these little things that none of these things alone are game breaking, but they do kind of add up, and it does kind of bring the experience down just a notch. And I just really, the frame rate issue is a problem, and especially if you play racing games in particular, are games that should run at a minimum of 60 frames. Uh, and I really don't understand why they haven't been able to lock that in. But in either case, I like what I'm hearing about these next gen consoles. I think that they're pretty much guaranteeing much higher frame rates, as well as the visuals and all this other stuff. They talk a lot about ray tracing. Um, so I'm really looking forward to see what happens with NASCAR games in particular, and what, let's say, 704 decides to do to take advantage of the more powerful hardware. Uh, One concern I have, and this is something that I experienced with the PS4, I'm really hoping that the current uh, generation of wheel and pedal sets are compatible with the next gen. I don't want to have to get a new wheel and pedal set just because of these new consoles. And for me in particular, it's not like I just have the wheel and pedal set on a stationary rig. I actually have a motion simulator, and it uses a G25 setup, and the wheel and pedals have sensors inside that were installed by uh, Canis simulators, the guys that built this, and these people are located in Europe. So if I have to get a new wheel and pedal set, it's going to create a whole new set of issues for me in particular, which I really hope I don't have to deal with that. So that's one thing that really scares me. But I do have high hopes because these next gen consoles, they came out the bat. That's one of the things that I hated about this current gen is the lack of backwards compatibility. So both Sony and Microsoft have taken this into account, and they have guaranteed that these consoles are going to be fully backwards compatible. So I'm hoping that means that, yeah, it's also going to be compatible with wheel and pedal setups. I guess it's going to be dependent on the games and stuff, but that is one thing that is in the back of my mind that I am worried about. But really looking forward to being able to have higher frame rates, better visuals across the board. But like I said, really, developers everywhere, you really gotta lock in 4K 60 frames, full HDR compatibility. To me, that should be your baseline. So, another thing about this upcoming PS5, which I'm really looking forward to, is something that I haven't given a lot of thought to, and that is load times. Now, load times is just something I've learned to live with. Excuse me. I've never really heard of anyone even talking about a solution. It's just something that we've had to live with. And when you think about it, how much time you spend. Let's say you're gaming for 5 hours. Think of all the minutes you waste just sitting around waiting for something to load. And you add it up. In 5 hours of game time, who knows? Like, I'm just guessing. Maybe somewhere close to half an hour is just sitting around. Um, so that's a big deal, and it's not something I gave a lot of thought to. But now that I'm hearing them talk about the solid state drives and having almost virtually eliminating load times, that's a big fucking deal. I'm really excited about that. So think about it. Just playing NASCAR and going from like the race shop or other parts of the game or the paint booth right to a racetrack and just racing and not having to sit around and wait for the game to load. That for me might be the biggest surprise and the thing I'm most anticipating about these next gen consoles, which is something I really didn't think about. So I'm really excited about that in particular. So I look forward to seeing how this stuff works out or plays out. In terms of another thing, online, will this also speed up the load times for online multiplayer? Like let's say NASCAR. And going from the lobby to the race, back to a lobby, man, if you don't have to just sit around and wait for everything to load up and jump into a race, I'm sure it's not going to be as quick as, let's say, offline content, but even if you just have to wait a little bit, that's a big fucking deal. So I'm really excited about the whole SSD drive, the load times, and all that stuff. So also, and this isn't really related to next gen consoles, but there's already, I think Sony opened up the ability to have crossplay amongst other consoles like Xbox or Nintendo or whatever. This is going to increase the lobbies in terms of players. You're going to have a lot more people to play with across different platforms, and imagine how cool that's going to be. You're going to have much more options in terms of lobbies and that you can join, and there's going to be more people involved. Currently now, I still play a lot of Max Payne 3, and I can tell you, I know every single person who plays that game because the lobbies are so empty. You know, it is an old game, all right? Let's get that out the way. I realize this is a PS3 game, We're going back many years, but it's still a great game, and there are still people playing. There is a community. It's just very small. So imagine being able to combine those lobbies with Xbox lobbies. That at least increases the amount of people you can play with. So I'm really looking forward to that. So I don't know what else to really say other than these consoles look extremely powerful, and I'm glad. I'm glad they learned from this current gen. They realized they just didn't do enough. Hopefully, 704, and when it comes to NASCAR games, maybe they can start working on implementing virtual reality, VR capability. It's tailor made for VR. I would love to go and buy VR headset just to be able to play NASCAR on it. So there's a lot to look forward to. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is the pricing. This is something that from the very beginning when they announced that yes, they are in development with these next gen consoles, a lot of people started making these big declarations like, hey, these consoles, they better be at the magic $400 price point. I never understood that because to me, I think it's ridiculous to expect to get the level of performance that these consoles are promising and expect to pay only 450, even if you want to stretch it to 500. That's ridiculous. I don't think it's reality. I think people are really delusional when they expect these consoles to hit. I mean, do you really expect Sony and Microsoft to take that kind of hit? Just eat hundreds of dollars for each console just to keep this price point? I don't think that's going to happen, and quite frankly, I just think it's ridiculous. I don't mind paying, what it's worth. Now, I understand if they come out and say these consoles are going to be 750. Okay, you know what? People are going to be like, God damn, that's too much. So I can't really tell you what the line is. But if these consoles are as powerful as Sony and Microsoft are claiming, and we're going to get all of this, how can you possibly expect these consoles to be so cheap? It's not realistic, and I think it's ridiculous. Whenever I see people, I watch all these videos, I see the comment sections, and all you hear people talk about, even in the videos, is this magic $400, $450 price point. And I'm like, are you people fucking insane? It's 2019. People are paying upwards of $800 for fucking cell phones every year. So why is it too much to expect these consoles to be selling at a much higher price point than $400? You cannot compare these consoles to the PS4 when it came out. So to expect Sony to hit these price points while at the same time providing all of this performance, it's ridiculous. I mean, I think people's expectations are outrageous. If you want a $400 price point, guess what? You're not going to get all this stuff. So, in my opinion, personally, I'm willing to pay whatever is fair. I don't know what a fair price is because when you start stacking up all of the hardware and the things that they're talking about doing, these consoles are basically PCs with optimized operating systems. So they really are on that level. Now, I'm not saying they are going to compete with top of the line gaming, high-end gaming PCs, but they are basically, on the level of maybe a mid-range PC. So it's crazy to think you can spend $400, $450 and get all this. I mean, people are really expecting Sony and Microsoft to eat hundreds of dollars for each console. That's crazy. So I think people need to really get realistic. So I don't know what a realistic price point would be, but personally, I'm willing to pay almost anything they're asking for. Now, obviously, if they come out and say we want $850 for this thing, I'm gonna say, you know what, come on, this is too much. But I'm willing to pay a lot more than 400 or $450. That's crazy. So I have a Samsung Galaxy 10e, and I forgot what I paid for that. It's way more than what people are expecting to pay for consoles. So I just think people are they're getting insane with this stuff. So they're saying that these consoles are probably going to be out for Christmas of 2020. And I've been telling people for a while, if you watch my videos, I've mentioned this before. I was telling people a while back that within the next couple of years, we're going to get next-gen consoles. And that's exactly, when you look at the timeline, it's going to be pretty much when I said it would be. And yeah, so we're looking at about a little over a year, at most a year and a half away from next-gen consoles. So I'm really looking forward to all that stuff. And from the looks of things, I think we have a lot to look forward to. Um, I think we're finally reaching a point where, when it comes to performance and what they want to do with these consoles, we're almost at a point of diminishing returns. What I mean by that is, I don't see, looking at these next gen consoles, I don't see a point where people are saying, you know what, in order for us to get better games, these developers need even more powerful hardware. I don't really think we're going to be saying that after the PS5 and the next Xbox, whatever they're going to call it, comes out. And I do think both Microsoft and Sony are going to provide some pretty kick-ass consoles. I don't see people after these consoles come out saying this stuff isn't powerful enough, or you know, we're not able to get better games because of the hardware. I think it's really all up to the developers at this point, and we're talking 4K, 60 frames minimum, HDR, ray tracing. I mean, I don't really think we need a lot more than that. I think now it's up to developers to get creative and innovative and make the most of it. I don't really know if they made the most of this generation. There are some really great games out there, but when you look at things in general, I am not really super impressed with this generation of games. I think that the most impressive generation for video games might still be the PlayStation 2 era. I mean, those were the most innovative games. You got a lot more content for your money. Games were a lot bigger. They just seemed to last longer. You had a lot more gameplay hours to invest. Now it's all about monetization, microtransactions, taking things out to sell it back to you in forms of DLC. So it's a different world we live in now. The gaming industry has changed, in my opinion, for the worse. But with these next gen consoles, I do have some hope that developers are going to push innovation, and hopefully we start really seeing some impressive stuff. So I want to know what you guys think about the next gen consoles and how they might relate to these future games. Are you looking forward to it? How much are you willing to spend? Do you agree with me on the price point stuff? Honestly, I see a lot of people dead set on this $400 to $450 price range. I just don't think that's realistic, and I think, if you're dead set on that, you're going to be sadly disappointed. I don't see any way these consoles are going to sell for that cheap. I just don't. I don't think it's realistic, and if you really want this level of performance, you got to pay for it. You got to pay for it. So Those are my thoughts. I look forward to your comments later.